In a small African village, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, the air carried the warmth of the sun and the scent of the earth. The village, a place where life moved slowly, where the fields were tilled by hand and the homes were made of stone and mud, had always been a sanctuary of sorts. But for Kai and her husband, Obi, the village was a place filled with quiet sorrow. It had been 7 years since they had wed, and their house, though filled with love, remained hauntingly silent. No children's laughter echoed through the walls, no little feet pattered on the dirt floors. The weight of their empty home crushed them, and the silent ache of unspoken sorrow grew heavier with every passing day. Kai had grown accustomed to the whispered words that floated through the village. Barren, they called her. A woman who cannot bear children is nothing, they said, their words sharp, biting into her very soul. Obi, too, was not spared from the cruel gossip. His masculinity was questioned, and the men of the village laughed behind his back, asking whether his dead snake would ever awaken. The shame they both carried was a heavy burden, an invisible weight that wore them down little by little, until hope seemed like a distant memory. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast the village in a warm orange glow, Kai sat on the small wooden bench outside their modest home. She had spent the day in tears, her thoughts consumed by the endless ache of their unfulfilled dreams. She had reached a breaking point, and in her heart, she knew something had to change. As she stared at the sky, the thought that had been growing in her mind finally took shape. "My husband," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of her resolve, "we have tried everything within our power. But there is one thing left, no matter how unthinkable it may seem." Obi, standing nearby, looked at her with a mixture of concern and confusion. "What do you mean, Kai?" he asked, his voice soft but laced with worry. Kai took a deep breath, her heart racing as she forced herself to say the words aloud. "There is a mad woman in the village. They say she has borne children before. I beg you, sleep with her. We can take her child, and finally, we will have the family we long for." Obi's face froze, his body stiffening at her words. "Kai, what are you saying? How could you even think of such a thing?" His voice was filled with disbelief, the very suggestion of it tearing at his soul.
Tears streamed down Chi's face as she looked at her husband, the love of her life, the man who had stood by her through every trial. "I know it's wrong," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But I cannot bear the shame any longer. The village mocks us, and our families are growing impatient. Please, Obi, for the sake of our future."
Obi felt his heart break as he watched the desperation in his wife's eyes. He knew that what she was asking was beyond anything he had ever imagined, but he also understood her pain. He knew the shame that had slowly eaten away at them both. After a long silence, he finally spoke, his voice heavy with resignation. "I will do it, Kai. I will do it for us." The next day, Obi sought out Na, the madwoman who had long wandered the village. Her hair was tangled and wild, her clothes torn and ragged. Her eyes were clouded, lost in a world that few could understand. Yet, despite her madness, there remained a strange beauty in her skin, once glowing, now faded with time, but her face still held traces of the woman she had once been. Obi approached her cautiously, offering food and speaking gently to her over the course of several days. He knew the dangers of his actions, but the desperation that gnawed at him pushed him forward. He brought her small gifts, fruits, a new shawl, beads to gain her trust. Slowly, Na warmed to him, unaware of the dark plan that was unfolding around her. One night, under the cover of darkness, Obi led her to a secluded hut on the edge of the village. There, in the silence of the night, he carried out the plan that had haunted his conscience. With each encounter, the guilt that consumed Obi grew deeper. He saw the vacant look in Na's eyes, the emptiness of her madness, and his heart ached. He felt as though he were betraying not just his wife but his own soul. Yet, he pressed on, each meeting a step closer to the child they so desperately wanted. The weight of their hopes and dreams was too heavy to bear. Months passed, and the fruits of their plan finally came to fruition. Na gave birth to a baby girl, a beautiful child with dark eyes that sparkled with life. Kai and Obi, fearful of the village's judgment, took the child in secret, leaving Na in her confusion. They named the baby Ada, and the joy that filled their home was like a ray of sunshine breaking through a long, dark storm. For the first time in years, their home was alive with the sound of laughter. Ada's presence was a balm to their weary hearts, and for a fleeting moment, the burden of their secret seemed worth it. But even as joy filled their lives, guilt lingered in the shadows. They knew the truth could never be revealed. If the villagers found out, if Na ever remembered what had been done, their family would be torn apart. They watched Na from a distance, fearful that she might remember the child she had borne and taken from her. As the years passed, Ada grew into a bright and beautiful girl, loved by all who knew her. The villagers, once cruel, now admired Kai and Obi for the daughter they had. Yet, in the corners of the village, whispers still lingered. How could a woman who had been barren for so long suddenly bear a child? There were suspicions, but none dared voice them openly. But secrets, like weeds, grow and spread in the shadows. Na, whose mind had long been clouded by madness, began to show signs of recovery. Her eyes cleared, and memories, long buried, began to resurface. The realization that she had borne a child and that child had been taken from her came crashing into her mind like a storm. Her heart, once lost in confusion, now beat with the fierce love of a mother. She began to search for Ada, her child, driven by a deep, instinctual pull. Na's presence in the village grew more noticeable. She would appear at the edges of Kai and Obi's home, watching Ada from a distance. The villagers, once dismissive of her, began to whisper once more. The connection between Na and Ada became impossible to ignore. They saw the way Na's eyes lingered on the child, and the rumors began to swirl. Kai and Obi, once again, were consumed by fear. They knew their secret was in danger of being exposed. One day, as Ada played outside, Na approached their home. She stood at the edge of the yard, watching the girl with longing in her eyes. Chi's heart skipped a beat as she saw Na, her gaze now sharp and focused. She knew the moment had come. Na stepped forward, reaching out towards Ada. "My baby," she whispered, her voice filled with sorrow and yearning. Kai rushed to stand in front of her daughter, her heart pounding in her chest. "Na, this is not your child. Please, go away." But Na's eyes were filled with recognition. "I know this child. She is mine. You took her from me." Chi's voice trembled as she tried to convince Na that she was mistaken. "Na, you are not well. This child is ours. Please, leave us in peace." But Na's gaze never wavered. She turned away slowly, her shoulders slumped in defeat. It was as though the weight of her memories, now fully restored, had become too much to bear. The weeks that followed were filled with tension. Na's presence in the village grew stronger, her search for Ada unrelenting. The villagers, once dismissive of Na, began to question Kai and Obi. Whispers of suspicion turned into open discussions, and the pressure mounted. Kai and Obi knew that they could no longer keep their secret hidden. Na's return to sanity was the spark that would ignite the truth. One evening, as they sat together by the fire, Kai spoke of her growing fear. "Obi, what if Na tells the villagers the truth? What if they come for Ada?" Obi clenched his fists, his voice filled with determination. "We cannot let that happen. Ada is our daughter. We must protect her at all costs." The love they had for their daughter was fierce, but the fear of losing her consumed them. They knew that their only hope lay in confronting Na and ending the nightmare before it tore their family apart. They met Na at the edge of the forest, where she often wandered. Her eyes, no longer wild and unfocused, were filled with fierce determination. "Ada is my child," Na said, her voice steady. "You took her from me. I remember everything now." Kai stepped forward, her voice breaking. "We are sorry, Na. We were desperate. Please, let us keep our family together." But Na's face twisted with rage and sorrow. "I will not rest until I have my child back." The confrontation escalated quickly, drawing the attention of the villagers. The truth began to unravel, and the village was thrown into chaos. Accusations flew, and the once silent whispers became loud, angry voices. The elders convened under the large baobab tree, and as they listened to the testimonies and accusations, the village was divided. Na stood before them, her eyes filled with sorrow but also with the unwavering determination of a mother. Ada is mine, she declared. You took her from me. Kai and Obi, standing protectively with Ada between them, felt the ground shift beneath their feet. The world they had fought so hard to build was crumbling before their eyes. The village elders, torn between sympathy and justice, would have to make a decision that would change everything.